attributed back to methane, more methane in the atmosphere. So it's quite a potent thing, and we always talk about carbon. Eric showed this figure before. What you see in orange on the left is the human-induced methane emissions. So the biggest part by far is agriculture and waste, followed by fossil fuel production and use. And there are some natural methane emitters like wetlands, permafrost, and things like that. And to show you a little bit the change over time is that agriculture, so this is from 1990 to 2030, and from here it's forecasted. So agriculture in New Zealand attributes over 43% of greenhouse gases, energy production, so that's Huntley and water power production, about 20%, transport, only 15%, but it's growing by 60%. So the more SUVs on the road, the more the problem gets difficult. Industry and waste, or waste is also quite a big chunk, that's 4%, so our landfills, for example. So what are the biggest greenhouse gas or methane emitters in New Zealand? So the biggest one is the cow. In particular, the dairy cow. The dairy cow emits about 100 kilos of methane per annum. You and me are probably emitting about 120 gram methane per annum, so it's multiple orders of magnitude more. However, there's also other emitters in New Zealand. So since the refinery has closed, that was by far the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases. It's not anymore. So the biggest emitter at the moment is the TY aluminium smelter down in Invercargill, Golden Bay Cement, and landfill. So this is a photo of the gasification plant at the landfill north of Auckland. They're actually capturing methane and using methane to produce electricity and driving their waste trucks with it, which I think is a pretty cool project. And just to put it into context, because Golden Bay Cement is so close here, 8% of all the greenhouse gases on the planet are produced with cement. Since 2 years ago, humans have produced more concrete and asphalt structures than there is human biomass on the planet. So we're creating a lot of cement and other things. We're basically concreting the earth. And by doing that, you have to heat the ingredients to 1500 degrees, and you need a lot of carbon for that. So 8% of all greenhouse gases are produced by cement. And I get the heebie-jeebies if the council is starting to concrete footpaths along the Hatea River, which then get washed out again, and then they have to redo it again. So I do think we should use less cement where we can. And Asia and other countries show us that you can build with wood and other things much nicer. So 50% of all methane in New Zealand is from agriculture, about 40% from oil, gas and coal, about 6% from industrial waste, and 4% still from landfill and waste. So all the waste you produce in your household goes to a landfill. So if you can reduce that waste, you're helping to reduce the methane emissions. Everything counts. If every one of us saves a few kilos every day or every week, that makes a difference. So again, Eric showed this picture. What you basically see here is these sort of yellow to red markers show you elevated methane emissions. So you see here the golden triangle where we're doing lots of farming. You have elevated emissions here in Otago where we do lots of agricultural stuff. You see higher emissions, and then you have sort of geothermal activities and other things which have even higher emissions. What I found interesting is it's 3/4 of the agricultural emissions are from livestock, so that's cows, dairy cows, are worse than beef cows. Don't ask me why. I haven't quite worked out why that is. But what I find interesting is 4% of that is contributed by fertilizer, and that's a fossil fuel produced fertilizer. So if we would substitute the fertilizer with biological fertilizer, for example, you can use algae and other things to put on the ground, and it actually can help to reduce the birth factor of cows as well, which is quite interesting. So you would get a double whammy by looking at using biofertilizer rather than a chemical or synthetic fertilizer. So I gave you some, I mean, this is, what I can do is, if you're interested, we can share the slides so you can have a look. I don't want to overwhelm you, but this is, I think, quite a nice diagram showing how methane actually gets into the atmosphere. But what I wanted to quote to you is that New Zealand produces 34 megatons of CO2 equivalents in methane. It's big numbers. I show you later sort of how it equates globally. So cows produce about 100 kilogram per annum in methane. We have 8 million cows here. That's a hell of a lot of methane we produce in here. We have 26 million sheep. Sheep only produce 13 kilograms per annum, but again, both cows and sheep globally, there's 1 billion of each. So again, coming to the nature study I quoted with concrete, since, again, when the study was done 2 years ago, we have produced more plastic than there is fish, animals, and birds on the planet. So we're doing a great job in taking over. And yeah, so humans produce some methane, but that's not the biggest amount. So the biggest methane emitters are the usual suspects: China, the United States, and Russia. So they provide over a third of all the methane emissions. What I found interesting is the next thing here. What are the single biggest methane emitters? So I don't know if anyone knows where Turkmenistan is. Yeah, where's Turkmenistan?
I've just heard of it.
Okay, so it's sandwiched between Russia and Afghanistan. And the interesting thing is Turkmenistan has got about the same population as New Zealand, but they have these big craters here where naturally methane is emitting into the atmosphere. And there's so much methane emitting, which is twice the methane of the UK. So it's a hell of a lot. So Turkmenistan, which is probably the 130th biggest country on the planet, is the 17th biggest emitter of methane. And again, you could close this thing up, capture that, and use it for something to produce electricity. But they're not doing that because they're dead poor, and lots of other countries don't really help by doing that. And this is an image done with remote sensing from satellites and some rendering to show where those emissions are. The biggest by far single event was last year when someone bombed the Nord Stream pipeline in the Baltic Sea. In less than a week, 500,000 tons of methane were emitted. That's about the third of Denmark's whole greenhouse gas emissions per year. That's a hell of a lot what happened there. So it's not only that whoever did this impacted economically Europe in particular, but also environmentally. That was a massive blow. So,
did you have a question?
Yeah.
I was wondering why the crater was on fire.
What was that, sorry?
Why was the crater also like fiery?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm not sure if that's a technically correct description, but a little bit when the refinery was going, they had excess gas, they were flaring off. And I think what nature does here is there's methane coming out of the inner part of the earth, and that's the mechanism to flare it off, I think.
Yeah, you can get these underground fires going, and they're really hard to put out, but you can eventually put them out. But there's another one in Pennsylvania that they've had a problem with an underground fire.
Yeah, and you can't just put water on it and it goes off. It's really high temperature, so it's not trivial. But if you can spend, what was that, $5 billion on a war, maybe you can spend a few $1 million on trying to solve that problem, I think. So how can you actually detect methane? So Eric again mentioned some methods, and again, I'm not an expert, but you can use infrared spectroscopy, you can use spectral analysis and other methods. So, and Eric is probably much better suited to answer some of those questions, how that can be done. But a lot of the satellites out there have some light-based measurements where with some smart, for example, some machine learning and other things, if you can combine them, then you can measure sort of methane levels. But what you always have to do at some point is you have to calibrate and ground truth that with chemical analysis at the bottom. So there's a good combination of combining the satellite analysis and some of the ground stuff. And last year, one of the teams in Fiji did an absolutely awesome job looking at blue carbon, so looking at salt marshes, mangroves, and seagrass. And I don't know if you know, a mangrove can sequester more carbon, 4 times more carbon than a tree. So we're always talking about putting more trees up. If we would save some of our mangroves, they are much more potent than planting trees. Okay, again, Eric talked about it. So on this list are 18 satellites, and I think 10 of them are already up in space. So you can actually get some of the data for your analysis. And a few of them are being put up this year or over the next few years. And we can provide some more details on what type of data is available. There's a hell of a lot of data. If you're creative, if you want to solve this problem, there's a lot of information there. I wanted to put this in context with what we're seeing here in Taitoperon. What I found really interesting, I talked about water vapor before. When the Whangarei volcano blew up beginning of last year, about 10 cubic kilometers of earth were removed from the bottom of sort of where the volcano was, which was already a lot. That's the stuff you're seeing here. But what was more importantly, 146 million tons of water were gushed up into the air up to 57 kilometers high. Some scientists calculated that this single event will create 0.035 degrees centigrade higher temperatures on the planet over the next 5 years. That's it. It doesn't sound like a lot, it is a lot. And that together with, you probably heard about ocean heat wave. So what that basically means is if out of a sudden the ocean has got higher sea surface temperatures than usual. And here are, I think from the 18th of May to the 23rd of May, sort of a simulation by NIWA, by MetOcean, on how the temperatures are. So for example, near Stewart Island, we have over 2 degrees higher temperatures than we had before. What that is resulting in it, they currently producing salmon down there, and the water is getting too warm to rear salmon there. So there's economical and ecological impacts. Here's a figure where it will look in 2100. So it's going to get really warm. So this is not going to be subtropical, but tropical. Yeah. And what that means is what I said before, the biggest greenhouse gas by far is water vapor. With this stuff, if the water gets warmer, if more water is in the atmosphere, there's more energy in the atmosphere, there's more water in the atmosphere, and if then winds blow it over land, then all of a sudden you get freak events like we had over the last couple of months. I mean, Auckland got flooded 3 times, parts of Northland got flooded, so and a lot of this stuff is exacerbated by this little thing called methane. It has got, as I said before, 86 times the potency of carbon. So we always talk about carbon dioxide, but methane is a much more deadly beast, and it's not very well regulated. So there's a lot of stuff we can actually do about it. So this is like almost the normal now, and we don't really if we don't act now, we will see more droughts, we will see more floods. With warmer water temperature, there was a piece of research I did many years ago, is in Antarctica, the ice shelf starting to melt, and sea level rise could be a result. So what can we do? So there was all, if you like, lots of numbers and maybe not the most uplifting things. But I do think there's a really positive thing about it. First of all, I'm really chuffed to see so many people here. I mean, I had expected maybe 10, maybe 15. This is awesome. So things really rocking up. And it would be fantastic if some of you actually enter the challenge and get some mentoring, because these guys are awesome. These guys are absolutely fantastic. This is world-class people. I mean, Eric helped to build the space station. I mean, how cool is that? So I really encourage you to enter the competition. And in addition to that, think about it. The greenhouse gases emitted by beef production is 3 times as big as the greenhouse gases of Japan. Japan has got 120 million people living there. That's a lot. And I think you need about 800 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of meat. So if we all start thinking about how often we eat meat, not everyone needs to become a vegetarian, but if we eat less meat, we put less strain on the planet. So eat less meat, travel less, or travel walking or cycling or something like that. Grow parts of your own food, a salad or tomatoes, everything counts. And I mean, at the moment, I find it pathetic of some of our grocery stores saying, oh, well, they have a really special on. The really special is tomatoes for $16. I don't think that's very special. If you actually grow it at your home or learn to grow stuff like these guys do here, then I think we could reduce our dependency there, and also reduce our waste. Because if a lot of the stuff is grown in your garden, you don't need to pack it in plastic and stuff like that. So reduce your waste, and the waste you have, please recycle that. And the most important thing is talk to your friends, your family, and other people about this. So the more people are engaged and interested in doing something about it, the more we can actually do about it. So thanks very much. And if anyone has got some questions, please let me know.
Thanks very much.